Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Kaplan, editor of The Banker. I'm here with Silvia Pavoni, the investment editor of The Banker, and we're going to discuss the upcoming annual meeting of the Inter-American Development Bank in Montevideo in Uruguay. As usual, we've got a special issue for the meeting, the March issue of The Banker, and it contains our top 100 ranking of Central American banks. It contains articles on Mexico and Uruguay, and as part of our cover story it talks about the rise of the regional bank, which is a trend going on worldwide but is as pronounced in Latin America as everywhere. So Silvia, tell us a little bit about what you think is happening on the Latin American banking scene in terms of regional banks coming up and some of the international players actually pulling back a bit.
Well, certainly Latin American banks have been growing their size and profitability over the years, and this is coinciding now with international groups such as, for example, HSBC and Santander, who has decided to change their strategy, their international strategy, and in some cases are also forced to do so to make sure that the capital ratios back at headquarters are what they ought to be.
Right, I think what's happening probably with the international banks, not so much in the case of HSBC and Santander, they're actually pulling back from Latin America, but there's more questions they're consolidating what they've got. So where they don't have like a decent percentage of the market, they will say, well, this isn't viable, and they want to just concentrate on the big operations. Is that your understanding too?
In a growing market, clearly everybody's just very keen to look out and make sure to have a foothold in the market of the future. In current markets, people are just concentrating on where they already have an established outfit and a safe presence in the country. So in the case of Santander, for example, the Colombian deal, their sale of the Colombian business to Chile's Coop Bank, which of course created many headlines, is a really interesting case in point, because in that country, Santander only had about 2.7% of the market share, which is not in line with the minimum 10% that the group wishes to have in their market.
So which are the Latin American banks that are kind of taking up slack on this? I mean, are we starting to see regional players actually amongst the Latin banks?
I believe so. I mean, definitely Itaú Unibanco, which is the result of a merger itself. Itaú Unibanco is from Brazil, of course, it's a Brazilian bank, and they are definitely growing in size and ambition as well. They now have a presence in most Latin American markets, and they certainly keep on growing. Another very interesting case is BTG Pactual. So an investment bank which has recently formally announced its merger with Chile's Selfin Capital, an investment firm. Selfin has clearly a presence in Chile, but also in Colombia and Peru, which are really interesting and fast-growing markets.
So we may see some more consolidation,
I believe so,
going ahead. Now, it's interesting, of course, a lot of Latin American countries are growing particularly quickly. A rather more healthy scene than we have here in Europe. But nevertheless, I think the Latin American governments are worried about the situation in the Eurozone. And I think Brazil's Finance Minister, Guido Mantega, had some comments about it recently. I mean, do you expect the Eurozone crisis to be an issue at the IADB meeting? I
expect people certainly to keep on talking about it. They were talking about it at another meeting that the bank attended, which is FELABAN, and tend to be about trade finance, and then even at that kind of level, bankers were concerned about the European crisis. This was in November. I certainly expect Europe to be one of the topics being discussed at the IADB as well.
Because, I mean, we can't really see Latin America continuing to grow if it's not able to export to its main markets, which is presumably Europe and the States still. Although in some cases, in Brazil's case, I mean, I think China is now one of the major trading partners, if not the major trading partner. So how much do you think that China and Asia is starting to pick up some of the slack if Europe is slowing down?
Well, there was a recent report published by the Inter-America Dialogue exactly on this topic. So on Chinese banks lending to Latin America in 2010, the amount of money they lent was higher than what the IMF and IADB together lent to the region.
Right, well, that's
which is really telling. Now we have ICBC, for example, which has bought Standard Bank in Argentina, and that's fully owned by majority owned by the bank, and I think we will keep on having Chinese banks looking at Latin America more and more. So not just from a financing of trade, but also with the actual presence in the country.
It's very, very interesting you mentioned that deal in Argentina, because I mean, some of the international banks are very nervous about Argentina, aren't we? And we are seeing very populist politics there. The US is concerned about the repercussions still from the debt default, and there's a bit of a conflict going on again about the Falkland Islands. So, I mean, how much do you think Argentina will be a talking point
yes.
in Montevideo?
Well, Argentina always keeps good headlines going, that's for sure.
That's true, yeah.
That's for sure. It is a very interesting country from the economic potential. They have clearly lots of commodities. Well, interesting commodities, and again, the Asian banks are looking at it. Others are also looking at it. Recently, Andreas Teves, the CEO and founding partner of BTG Pactual, went on the record during a conference call with journalists saying that Argentina is one of the markets that the firm would like to expand into, but not just yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, in a way, sort of Argentina, it seems a little bit like a throwback to those sort of populist regimes that we had in Latin America going back 15, 20 years, and whereas most of the rest of the continent's moved on and it's sort of kind of opened up, it's got a more legalistic system, you know, a more kind of transparent system, and Argentina doesn't seem to be making that transition. I mean, why do you think that is?
The feeling that you get, I think, about Argentina is one of still an insular country, and many people are both interested and worried about Argentina. The worry comes from the political side. So hopefully things are going to be put in line with what investors would like the country to become soon, and that everybody will just end up enjoying the great opportunities the country offers. But a great example recently is the ongoing debate about, for example, the inflation rates, which is, again, very often in the headlines. So years back, the government invited the IMF to look at the statistics used to put together these inflation rates, and the IMF then went back saying, well, we're not there yet, we're going to postpone the deadline so that you can keep your books and house in order. So it seems like nobody's really pushing or putting too much pressure on the country to make sure that the whole statistics are reliable and believable.
Okay, thank you, Silvia. So there we have it. Lots of interesting issues are going to be discussed at the IADB meeting in Montevideo in Uruguay, and copies of The Banker will be distributed with our top 100 Central American rankings, our articles on Uruguay and Mexico, and the rise of the regional Latin American bank.